I'm going to start the session in 10 seconds. 10, 9. Yeah, we're over 2:22 now.
Okay.
Starting now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to the DBA Fundamentals virtual chapter meeting for June. Today's presentation is entitled Identifying Long-Running Queries. It's going to be presented by Grant Fritchey. First, I'd like to thank the Professional Association of SQL Server, PASS, for supporting our chapter. Management at PASS truly works tirelessly to bring us free training all over the world, and they do a great job of it. Go to SQLPass.org and you can find out all of the options that we have. We have virtual chapters, local chapters. You can find pretty well any subject that you want, either recorded or coming up in a live meeting. You can send us questions at fundamentals.sqlpass.org. My name is Steve Cantrell. I'm the chapter co-vice president of DBA Fundamentals, and not handling this introduction well. I'm kind of a little discombobulated here. Next month, we're going to have Mickey Stu presenting a session called SSRS 101. That's on July the 7th. We are recording the session, and it's going to be available probably in our archive session in the next couple of days. We'll talk to Grant. We'll be able to get the slides and scripts either at his side or ours somehow. PASS Summit this year is 10/26 through 10/30. And if you want to go, there's all sorts of options to save you money right now. All the VCs and a lot of local chapters have discount codes of $150. Make sure you use one of those. Ours is VC15GB-Q6. At any one of these locations or one of the chapters, you should be able to get a discount of $150. In July, I think it goes up another $400, July the 12th. So be sure, and if you're going to go, do it before then. We're offering something a little bit special to try to win a session that we can then raffle off. Instead of giving the $25 per session away at the end of every session, we're going to save it up and give away $200, which are our funds for the rest of the year, to people that use our discount code, and also one person from every session is going to be included in a group. So it shouldn't be more than 15, 20, 30 people at the most, so you should have a good chance of winning that. We'll give that away in September, and hopefully we'll have a session to give away in September also. That'll give you time to plan for going to Summit. Okay, that's all the housekeeping I can think of at the moment, so let's get started. Grant has been around a long time. Everybody should know him as Scary DBA. He's a SQL Server MVP with over 20 years experience in IT, including time spent in support and development. We were just talking about that. I'm on call this week, and he says he doesn't really have to do it anymore, just unless he wants to. He's worked with SQL Server since version 6 back in 1995. He's developed in VB, VB.NET, C#, and Java. He's authored books for Apress and Simple-Talk and joined Redgate as a Product Evangelist in January 2011. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Grant.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Cool. All right, so let's get started. The title slide's been up way too long. Nobody wants to look at that anymore. All right, so the goals. Goals here are really, really straightforward. I want to show you 3 different ways that you can identify long-running queries. I'm going to discourage you from using one of those ways, but I still want to show it to you because it's pretty common. It's quite ubiquitous, and we're gonna take advantage of it. But I'm going to discourage your use of it. But we'll talk about that. I do want you to recognize the strengths and weaknesses of each of these methods that we're going to go over, so that you know when to use them, where to use them, where it's going to be available, and all that kind of stuff. we also want to know how to interpret the data, because getting the data out of these things is actually pretty easy, but understanding what you're seeing can be somewhat problematic. So we're going to kind of go through that too. The goal here is to introduce these topics. We're not going to drill down in a major way. So this is just going to be pretty lightweight stuff, give you an idea of what's going on. As said, my name is Grant Fritchey. I am the Scary DBA. Work for Redgate Software. I'm very proud of that. This is my contact information. If you have questions, I would really like you to get in touch. This is my direct email. This is my Twitter handle. That is my blog, scarydba.com. I will put these slides up on slideshare.net to ensure that they are there. I'll also make sure a copy of them is on my blog. You can get done whatever you need to get done. But I really would like you to get in touch. If you've got questions after today, I will try to provide answers. That's just something that I thoroughly believe in, and I will try to do my best to get you answers if you need them. And other than that, let's get going. Oh, and by the way, I'll put this up again at the end just so you don't have to feel like you have to write it down now. This is our agenda. Please memorize it. Moving on. So the question comes up a lot of times is, why should we tune queries? Because the easy answer is just buy more hardware. Well, the fact is that not everyone can go out and buy new hardware. And the really interesting thing is where do the problems come from? Now, Paul Randall put together a blog post and asked, where do most of your performance issues arise from? Where are you seeing these? And he got a couple hundred respondents, and he put together the data, and I put it into this nice little chart. And you can see the link there below if you want to go and read the original information. But here's the bit. Now you say, oh, well, it's T-SQL code. That's 26%, and that's the majority of the problems. Well, yeah, but not really. I mean, 26% is not a majority. That's a pretty small amount of information. Well, yeah, but if you look at the next bit, poor indexing strategy, 19%, suddenly we're now looking at 35% of our problems are coming out of something related to T-SQL indexing, that kind of stuff. And then you say, well, I/O subsystem 16%. Well, there's a place that you got to do some work, right? Application code. Well, application code is code. So code is also a problem. Now, application code could be you may be working with a ORM, an object relational mapping tool like Entity Framework or Hibernate or InHibernate, and you may be working with one of these tools and it's going to be generating T-SQL code that may need tuning. So we're going to add that to our 35%. Now we're up to 47%. Now, database table structure and schema design, well, that's your normalization, foreign key constraints, all that kind of stuff, absolutely related directly to your queries, query tuning, and all that fun stuff. We're now up to 55%. Old, out-of-date, missing statistics, again, directly related back to query tuning, and so now we've gone from 55 to 64%. In short, 64% of the problems reported for performance are directly related to queries. You're going to see performance problems in 64% of your queries. In queries, 64% of the time. And so that is why we're going to spend time worrying about queries, worrying about stuff. I see a few people saying, I'm off by 10. Okay, 75%. Cool. That makes it better. The key thing is that, and by the way, I was told there would be no math. The key thing is that there's a lot of reasons to tune queries. Okay, so that's why you're going to be worrying about tuning queries. You can't always throw hardware at the problem, and as we've just seen in my badly done math, 74% of the problems are coming out of queries. So then that raises the very next question. Which queries do we tune? Now, honestly, I would say the very first query you worry about is the one that the CIO runs on a regular basis. If your most senior person has got a query, you want it to run as fast as humanly possible. But after that, which query do we tune? Do we tune the query that people complain about the most? Yeah, maybe. That's actually not a bad method. It's not very proactive. It's kind of reactive, but that could be one. Do you run the query that just runs the longest, the query that runs just the longest period of time? Well, yeah, maybe, but maybe that's just your backup queries, right? Who knows? We kind of do, it does matter which query it is, why is it running long, and so you got to worry about that. Do you tune the query that uses the most resources? Maybe, right? You've got a query that uses, 100% of the CPU, but it runs at 3 a.m. when you've only got 20 users on the system. So you don't care that much, right? So it really comes into, you've got to make it's not, query tuning and knowing which queries to tune is not a question of a simple formula. You really kind of have to think about this and plan accordingly. You can't just guess. So we need to tune from knowledge. You need to understand your business. I've heard it said that a good DBA doesn't care what kind of business they work for because it's all ones and zeros, and I think that that is probably one of the most heinous, ignorant statements I've ever heard in my life. Yes, a good DBA should be able to deal with any business, but the DBA cares what that business is. You need to understand where your load is coming from, how your load is being done. You do care about the business. You also care about the application. You cannot simply ignore the application that you're dealing with. You actually need to know what that application is, what it does, how it makes its calls. You may need to know that at a code level. It doesn't hurt to have some C# knowledge, to be able to look at how did they put this code together, how did they write this query, how are they generating this stuff out of InHibernate? Is there a better way in InHibernate to generate these queries? Can I identify that and help my development team? That's another thing you may need to look at. And then finally, you need knowledge of the queries. You got to understand T-SQL. You got to understand how these things work and where the queries are coming from. And in order to understand the queries, you have to gather data. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The data gathered on queries. Pretty straightforward stuff. Obviously, you need to understand the frequency of execution. How often is this query being called? If it's called once a day and runs in 30 seconds, do you care? If it's called a million times in an hour and runs for 30 seconds, do you care? Oh, yes, you do, right? It's the frequency is going to affect things. Duration. This query runs in 10 milliseconds. Do I care? No. Unless it's being called a million times an hour and suddenly that 10 milliseconds is painful to me. You need to know how much CPU is used. You need to know I/O because I/O is always a problem. You do need to worry about memory use. You also need to worry about memory paging and all kinds of other stuff like that. You need to know about date and time. When was this query run, right? It matters when the queries get run. Secondary data that's not quite as important but still extremely useful, especially when we start talking about query tuning. You want to know the parameters passed. Parameters can lead to bad parameter sniffing. There's also most of the time good parameter sniffing, but that's a completely different discussion. Parameter sniffing, bad parameter sniffing can lead to bad performance. So the parameter values are going to matter as to what kind of queries get called. Which application is making the call? That's going to matter. More importantly, how is that application connecting to the server? Because the connection settings, the ANSI connection settings, actually can affect the execution plan generated by SQL Server. By changing those ANSI connection settings, you can change the execution plan and you can get worse performance. So that's something that's going to matter. Which user is making the call? Differences in, again, connection strings, differences in permissions, throttling, and things like that that may be enabled per user or per user group are going to affect queries. And then finally, the execution plan is another piece of data that you may want to gather when you're going to look at queries. Now, when you go to tune a query, an execution plan is vital. So that's generally it. So now the tools that we're going to use 3. We're going to look at DMO, Dynamic Management Objects, also called DMVs, Dynamic Management Views. We're going to look at server-side trace. We're going to look at extended events. Now, most of the time today we're going to spend is on DMO and extended events. We are going to talk trace, but that's the one I'm going to discourage your use in, but we'll get to that in a minute. At this point, questions. How would you figure out the amount of RAM a query uses? That's different because any given query doesn't necessarily use the same amount of RAM because it's the result sets of that query that matter. And that one that you're going to have to gather those metrics individually and separately. And we're not going to drill down on that today. Not enough time. Okay, so that's all the questions I see. Dynamic management objects, DMOs. These things are glorious. I love them to death. The beauty, one, it's immediate. I get the phone call, there's something slow on the server, what the heck do I do? I run a query against my DMOs and I start to get some information about what's going on the server. Also, another huge strength for DMOs, it's T-SQL. It's SQL Server. So if it's T-SQL, you're going to be able to gather that information in a language that you're already working in. If you're used to writing queries, if you're writing, data definition language queries, if you're writing data manipulation language queries, you're learning how to write T-SQL and you're using T-SQL. Awesome. And once you've got the T-SQL in place and once you start messing with these, the real beauty and the real strength of them is that they are completely combinable. You can put them together in unique combinations to put together information that you need at the time you need it. And so this is a huge win. So, weaknesses with DMOs. One, they depending on the DMO that we're talking about, and there are different DMOs and different stuff, but most of the DMOs we're going to be talking about when we talk about query tuning are completely dependent on cache. That means they are dependent on what's in memory, what's stored in the procedure cache, and if something is not in the procedure cache, it won't be visible in the DMOs. Worse yet, if something flushes your procedure cache, it won't be visible in your DMOs. You can lose data very readily from the DMOs. And it also is dependent on currently executing sessions. You get something was running slow earlier today or yesterday. You can't go and necessarily look at the DMOs and get much information on it. You're also, from the DMOs, not going to see parameter values. You're not going to be able to see the parameters values passed to a stored procedure. You can see which procedure was run, absolutely. But you're not going to see, that they passed in the value of 42. You also, for the cached information, don't get any user information. Now, for the currently executing stuff, you absolutely do get user information, but for the cache stuff, you do not. There's also no runtime information, and I'm going to define more carefully I'll go ahead and define it now. If you're looking at currently executing stuff, you can see how long it took. But what you're not going to get is each individual call on the aggregate stuff, and which queries in our aggregate we're going to cover, because we're going to switch over to the queries and go through a whole bunch of T-SQL code. Another weakness is actually that it's T-SQL. The same T-SQL that is, problematic for us, is our strength, can also be problematic. T-SQL is a wonderful language. It really is. I mean, it's very powerful. It's based on some extremely good and cool mathematics, and it does good things. But it is very much not a procedural language. It's a query language. If you need to do certain types of manipulation, T-SQL can be somewhat problematic, somewhat difficult. It can slow things down a little bit. So I list it as a weakness, even though I do love T-SQL. I write T-SQL. It's awesome. But it's something of a weakness. Now, before we move on, in that case, if I run free-proc cache frequently, DMVs become useless. Yes, sir. And if you're running free-proc cache frequently, we should talk, because that's not something you should necessarily do. As a matter of fact, it's probably not something you should do. Can we check parameter values passed to query with DMV or extended events? You can with extended events, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You cannot with DMVs. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So when we go to read the results of the DMOs, hey, again, it's T-SQL. But there are various hooks and mechanisms you will need to put together the different objects, and so the one thing I would recommend is picking up a copy. It's a little bit long in the tooth at this point, but it is still a great resource, and that's Lewis Davidson and Tim Ford's book called Performance Tuning with SQL Server Dynamic Management Views. It's available as a free download, so you can get that for free, or you can buy a paper copy. But that's a great resource and a great reference. It shows you most of what you need to do from basic performance tuning. My scripts are different than their scripts, but there's a lot of overlap between what I'm going to show you and what they show you. And so it's a great, great resource. I strongly recommend it. So let's play with code. I'm going to pause here for just a second. Are we visible on the screen? Can we see the SQL Server Management Studio? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, so the first query I want to show you is stupid simple. Select star from system exec requests. Now, system exec requests shows currently executing queries. Well, heck, let's make some currently executing queries. Let's do that. We're just going to run this little PowerShell script, and all it does is generates code queries. It's nothing that we're worrying about for this presentation. I just have it up for some other work I was doing. Normally, I wouldn't worry about whether or not it was on or not, but we're going to leave it on for now. We execute this query. And it's running really, really slow. Come on, girlfriend. Server's acting up a little bit. Let's close some things out. We do not need Visual Studio right now. No, it's already closed. Oh, that's because I ran this against Azure. My mistake. Let's connect up. Hang on. There it goes. Connected to Azure and ran, but we're going to connect it over to my local machine. Sorry about that. Bad demonstration. Bad demo. Let's get on the right database too. Not that this matters for this query, but we're going to be running queries later that it will matter. All right. And the results come back. And so we've got a number of queries that are running on the system right now because I've generated load on this. I've got a whole bunch of queries running. Now you'll notice a lot of these are actually system queries. They're system IOs. System queries that are running from low-level stuff running underneath the covers. But we've got a few queries down at the bottom of the screen, and I recognize it's a little hard to see, but you don't need to see the details yet. The things to think about that you can see, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see them. Obviously, session ID matters. Which session is doing these things is important. Start time, status, whether it's running, whether it's sleeping, what it's doing. Which command is being called, really important. SQL handles, stuff like that we're going to get into in a minute. Which database are we in? Which user is doing it? Now you'll notice, again, most of these are system people, but we're not focusing on the details yet. I just want to give you some idea of the information available to you. The wait type. So if something's currently waiting, what is it waiting on? And how long is it waiting? Useful information if you get that phone call. Hey, things are running slow. Let me go into system exec requests and see what's running. And oh my gosh, I've got something that's waiting on a particular resource. Let's see what it is. Last wait type, if it's not waiting on a resource currently, what was it waiting on before? Right, again, useful information. But it doesn't end there. It keeps going. Let's zoom over a little bit. Zoom back in. Open transaction count, number of result sets, transaction ID, estimated completion time, and percent complete. Don't get excited. Your basic query will not show up here, but backups or restores will. Now, ask me how accurate it is. I'll tell you how accurate it is. It's not terribly accurate. However, you still get some information. You can see an estimated completion time for something like a backup or a restore. The amount of CPU used, great. Total elapsed time for this query, and you'll notice these queries are ridiculously big numbers, and that's because these are system things running since the last time my system's been rebooted. let's see, reads, writes, logical reads. Exactly the kind of stuff going on, how much activity is going on inside the system. Zooming back out because we've got more. Not all of this is important, but a lot of it is. The ANSI settings, again, remember I said those connection settings were important. Well, we can see right here what those connection settings are, whether or not they're on or off. We get to see deadlock priorities, row counts, all kinds of fun stuff. If there's settings that are in there, we get to see them. Now let's zoom back out. That's system exec requests. That is queries running against the system live now. Let's take a look at system exec query stats. This is queries that have run against the system. These are queries in the past, and it's an aggregation. Let's go to the results. And we start off with the SQL handle, which you're going to learn about in a minute. Statement start and end offset, you're going to learn in a minute. Plan handle, you're going to learn in a minute. Creation time, when did this query get loaded into cache? Last execution time, when was it last used? Execution count, how many times has it been used? What is the total worker time, CPU? Last worker time, min worker time, max worker time. How much CPU has been used by this query? Great, great stuff. And it's aggregated for the entire time that it's in cache. Once it leaves cache, this information is gone. You also get the same thing. Let's just zoom in, kind of go over this. You get the same thing for reads. You get the same thing for writes. You get CLR time, if anybody out there is using CLR store procedures, and there's places where you should be. You also get, let's go on all the way over. There we go. Give me a second, zoom back in. You get total elapsed time, last elapsed time, min elapsed time, max elapsed time. Query hash, query plan hash. These are the query fingerprints. Extremely useful. Discussion for another day, but something you do care about. The total rows. How many rows has this thing moved? Last number of rows, min number of rows, max number of rows. You get to see stuff going across. How much data is being moved by this thing? All of this stuff is stored and aggregated over time. Now there's also another one, we're not going to go into details on this one right now, it's exec procedure stats. It's basically the exact same thing as query stats, but broken down only by a given procedure. So if you want to look at stored procedures, you can see that, and you're not going to be looking at them. So that's the basics, right? Those three are your basics. Exec requests to get what's going on now, query stats or procedure stats to get that aggregated view. Let's drill down just a little bit. Let's combine them. So what we're going to do is we're going to query against system exec requests, query stats. We're going to cross-apply to system exec query plan, and we're going to cross-apply to system exec SQL text. And I'm just going to do a select star because everyone likes select star. I'm joking. I'm joking. Select star is not evil. It's not bad, but it can be problematic. Okay, so the results coming back. Let's scroll way over because you've already seen most of this data, but what we've added on over here is, let me zoom in so you can see, we've added in, you'll see there's a thing, it doesn't look like an execution plan. For anyone who's looked at an execution plan before, this doesn't look like one, but you'll notice right there, I've got my little pop-up saying, oh, it was there a second ago. Come on, stay. Be good. Click to show in XML editor. Well, when you open up a .showplan file, as this is, in the XML editor, what you get, come on, what you get, believe it or not, I'm clicking. VM is definitely acting a little slow today. Come on. Oh, the query's still executing. Okay, hang on. We'll just stop that. Yeah, somebody just spotted it too. Query's still running. So stop, pop here. There we go. What we get is an execution plan. So we're not going to go into details on reading execution plans. I'd love to talk to you guys about that on another day. I love that topic. But you get an execution plan. The other thing that you get is over here on the right, I didn't want to show that just yet, is you see the query. So I can now pull back the query, the execution plan, and the aggregation of the interesting data. So now are you going to run this query? No. This query is kind of useless. What we're going to run is a query like this. Let me just move down to the from clause. You'll notice in the from clause it's the same queries we did before. From query stats, cross-apply to query plan, cross-apply to SQL text, but now I'm going to order by total elapsed time descending. And instead of select star, I'm going to get smart. First thing I'm doing is I'm going to do a top 10. So what am I doing? Top 10 longest running queries. I'm then going to get a substring value. Why am I getting a substring value? Well, because a lot of times we're dealing with batch statements instead of individual statements. So we're going to get the individual statement, then we're going to get the query plan, the query hash, because we're getting the query hash is the query fingerprint, the number of times it was executed, and then a whole bunch of other interesting bits of information about that query. Now this is something you're probably going to run on a regular basis, because what we've just done here is identify, as soon as this finishes running, these are the 10 longest running queries on my system right now in cache. Okay, so what's in cache? These are the 10 longest ones. And you can see the execution count, the total elapsed time, last elapsed time, logic, all that fun stuff. And then we're ordered by total elapsed time. So how, the total time, number of executions times the time of each of those executions. This is the ordering statement. Those would be in one way how I would identify my top 10 queries, and I could go in and start tuning those. Maybe. You might want to only look for execution count, and you could order that way. You might want to order by the most I/O. You might want to order by some combination of these three things. I did at one point, I took and multiplied my elapsed time times the I/O times the CPU, so I got this new giant number and said that that was query cost and sorted by that. It was somewhat not that useful, but just to give you an idea of what you can do. It was a mixed bag. It was somewhat accurate and somewhat messed up, but at least gives you an idea of ways that you can do it. What's the unit time measured in? In this case, that's microseconds or milliseconds. So those numbers are huge. You can combine this with query stats, right? We're going to skip on by and go for a particular database, right? So instead of going after those values, we can look for that. But here's where things get fun. The DMVs give us a whole bunch of views into the system, different than just running at top queries. For example, there's a whole set of DMVs around missing indexes. You can go into the missing indexes and pull out that information, and this is from books online, but it's not that useful. However, you can query XML directly against the thing, and yes, I'm going to post these. I'm not going to run these queries right now. I just want to show you the power of going on inside these things. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but I can run directly against the XML and pull back bits and pieces out of the execution plans directly, and so I can look for top 10 queries that are running slow, or top 10 queries that have missing index suggestions, all that kinds of things. And we're going to skip past that one, and cool, we're good. Okay, so let me just turn around here and answer a few questions about the DMVs, because the basic idea here, let me put that one back up, because this is, fundamentally, this is your baby, and you can mix and match from it as you want. So that's the basic one, right? Select top 10 and order by some value. Now, unit time I already answered. Are these the currently running queries or historical data? This is the historical data stored in cache. Assuming, however long this stuff has been in cache, that's how, that's what's going to get answered. How do you calculate how old the procedure cache is? Yeah, it is a constantly moving target, and it's not so much that you calculate the cache itself, is each individual query, how long has it been in cache. because there is no other way to do that. Do you ever order by average total elapsed time divided by execution count? You can, sure, why not? No reason why not. That's a useful measure. Again, it's play with the numbers to see which ones are most useful in your situation. But the beautiful thing is that with this really simple query, the numbers are available, right? And this query is not complex. Now, I would be completely without scruple if I did not mention that there is an awesome store procedure that you guys can download and run on your systems called SP Who Is Active, and that's by Adam Mechanic. It's a great tool. Now, the reason I don't demo it or teach it, one, it's Adam's, not mine. Two, I'm trying to teach you where Adam gets his knowledge. I'm letting you know that he goes in and queries these things directly. Yeah, SP Who Is Active, that's correct. But the thing is that he's just querying these views. You can do these views yourself. You do not have to wait on his tool. If you just want a really quick little query, you can take advantage of this. Is the script going to be available? Yes, it will be, as well as the slide deck. Actually, most of these scripts are already on scarydba.com/resources. In fact, all of them are. All right, so are there any other questions on the DMVs? Because I want to make sure, oh God, look at the time. Yeah, no more questions on DMVs. Moving on. Server-side trace. We are not going to spend long on server-side trace. I'm going to go through some interesting bits about it, but notice I am not saying profiler. I am saying server-side trace. Server-side trace is everywhere. I looked in 2016. It is still there. It has a beautiful GUI for setting up traces. That is profiler. It has a beautiful GUI for reading output. That is profiler. It has a beautiful GUI that's going to hurt you, and we'll talk about the weaknesses in a minute. Server-side trace is fairly low cost if you set it up correctly, and it works well with distributed replay, which is a really awesome tool. Weaknesses: trace is difficult to set up, and I'm going to look at exactly how trace is set up, and you're not going to be happy. I don't like it intensely, especially now that I've got a better tool. It is a pain to maintain trace, very much so. And low cost does not mean no cost. The thing about profiler, well, let's talk about it. The thing about profiler is you should not be running profiler directly against your production systems. Profiler uses a very particular mechanism for buffering the information that it uses, and that mechanism is different than the buffer for trace. So if you set up a server-side trace using the scripts I'm going to show you, that uses one buffer. If you connect Profiler GUI directly to your production system and watch SQL TV, it is using a different buffer, and that different buffer can hurt the memory on your system, and you can literally bring your server to its knees by turning on SQL TV. Don't run Profiler against your production system. Set up server-side traces and use an output to a file, and use Profiler to read the results from the file. That's cool, okay? You can load the results into a table. The RML utilities, which is a free utility from Microsoft, great. And there's a number of third-party products out there that work with Profiler data as well. Let's go and look at server-side trace real quick because I want to spend the rest of our time on extended events. Spent too much time on DMOs. I get very excited about DMOs. I love DMOs. Scrolling down. What about Activity Monitor? Don't use Activity Monitor myself. But just so you know, Activity Monitor is just going against the same set of stuff that we're looking at. Primarily the DMOs is what it's using. There we go. Server-side trace. Why do I not like server-side trace? Well, this is the script for creating a very simple trace. This trace captures two events. It captures RPC complete and batch complete, and it captures a few columns. So here it is. You're going to set up few IDs that you have to load, date, time, and then you have to do SP trace set event, trace ID 10, 1, 10, 10, 10, 3, 10, 6, 12, 1, 12, 3, 12. In other words, it's rather hard to read because which event is this? I don't know. What is that trace ID? I don't know. What are these values? I don't know. Setting this stuff up through the T-SQL is a pain. You can turn trace on and off, but here's the beautiful thing. Let's say you have a trace that you run all the time. If you restart your server, that trace is gone. You have to recreate the trace. You can't turn it on and off. You can read directly from the trace, fn trace get table. So if we output to that trace file, as I recommend, you can read directly through that in T-SQL. Not doing it right now. We don't have much time. Trace works. Trace is everywhere. But I am not a fan of I am not a fan of trace. I think it is very costly. It doesn't have very good filtering, and extended events is the new mechanism. Oh, and by the way, trace is deprecated, meaning they are not developing for it anymore. There are not new trace events coming out in any of the new versions of SQL Server. If you're running 2008 R2, you probably have a pretty good set of trace events. 2012, you have a radically reduced set of events. 2014, more so. 2016, more so, because all of the events are going into our next topic. Extended events. Extended events are awesome. These are the greatest things since sliced bread. They are wonderful, fantastic. Now, there is a GUI for setting things up, but only in 2012 or better. There is a GUI for reading the output, but only in 2012 or better. And when I say 2012, I mean 2012 Management Studio. These things are available in 2008 or better. 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2014, 2016. They are absolutely there. They will be there shortly in Azure SQL Database, but they're not there yet. Oh, and by the way, trace will never be released in Azure SQL Database, so you're going to have to go to extended events eventually. How do you take care of performance issues in Azure? Same way. Extended events are extremely easy to create, extremely easy to maintain, and they have a very, very, very low cost. It's a completely different mechanism for gathering these events. It's much more low level. It's built into the system at a lower level. The filtering works on an exclusionary basis, unlike trace, which captures every event and then throws away based on filters. This stuff will not capture events that are filtered. So the better you're filtering on an extended event, the lower the cost and the lower the impact on your system. The weaknesses, it is only 2008 or better. If we're still working on 2000, 2005, you will not be able to use these. You're going to default back to trace. There is no GUI until 2012, which, sorry. And this, at least currently, doesn't work well with distributed replay. Reading the results, you can open it up in Data Explorer or you can load it into a table. Let's play with this and get going. So you remember the long set of commands to set up a really simple 2 events. Well, here they are. Create event session performance on server. Hey, I know what the event session is. Add event. SQL Server .rpc completed. Hey, I know what the event is. Oh, add an action. Capture the query hash. Remember that fingerprint I mentioned? Let's go ahead and capture that. Add an event. SQL batch completed. Hey, I know what that is. Also, I would like to add a column for the batch text, and I would like to capture the action query hash. Again, add a target. I'm going out to file. Ta-da! The with events, that's just included when you do an export. Don't worry about that stuff. In short, I've created an event. It is that easy. Now, it gets easier. If we look at the GUI, I've got a series over here. These are events I work with on my system on a regular basis. Various reasons I've got them running or not running. But the beautiful thing is that they are stored with the system. When I create one of these things, they are stored and kept, and I can turn them on or off. If I reboot my server, they're still here. I don't have to worry about that. Also, if you want to you can do a new session wizard. I don't like the wizard. I prefer just the new session GUI. Works better, in my opinion. So we're gonna look at that to start with. So you give it a name, whatever name you want. You can pick templates. So we can look at, query batch sampling, query batch tracking, query weight statistics, activity tracking, all kinds of fun stuff. Count query locks. I mean, there's a whole series of these, or you can create your own. You can start the event with the server if you want to. So you can start capturing these things with the server. You can start them immediately after capturing things, and you can immediately start watching live data after we set this up. Also, something unique to this you can't do in Trace, we can do causality tracking. How are events related to one another? If there's a series of calls, say an insert and a trigger, you may be able to see those things related. If you're looking at weight statistics, you can see what weights are occurring based on a particular query. It'll put all these things together and track them. You don't always want to do that, but you can. It is great. I mean, it's just so much more functionality than is available with Trace. Now let's just say we want to capture store procedures. RPC. I type in RPC, it does the search. All we've got to do is find RPC completed. Hey, look at that. There we go. RPC completed shows us the information occurs when a remote procedure call has completed. Excellent. It shows us the columns that are automatically captured. We don't have to go and set columns anymore. We choose that one, and now it gets moved over here to our selected list. We can click on Configure, and it goes over, and we've got actions, or the global fields that we can add. Remember before I added the query hash. Not a bad action. Now remember, action's a good use of the name. Don't use global fields, use action. These are extra information, therefore it is extra processing, and therefore you can put additional load on the server by choosing a bunch of these or all of these. You're going to hurt performance. So you want to be very minimal in which of these you pick and choose. Nothing wrong with using them. Don't not use them, but please use them cautiously. Filtering. Click here. Hey, look at that. Fields. Only capture events for duration that is, whoops, clicked wrong place. That is greater than, 500. Now in that case, that's 500 microseconds. This measures in microseconds, not milliseconds. So you would want to be able to do that. Then if we look at the event fields, and the reason that's last is because most of them are already turned on. Most of the ones you're going to need are already turned on. You can capture output parameters if you want to. Most of us don't need that most of the time, so you leave it off. Data stream, most of us don't need that, so you leave it off. It's just off by default. So, but what you do need is already selected because you want the statement, right? Which query got passed. And these are remote procedure calls. And so the question that was asked earlier, how do I see parameter values? Dun, 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 dun. This will show you the parameter value passed. So when we capture these events, we'll get to see exactly which procedure was passed, which procedure was called with which values. That's where this comes from. Now, obviously, data storage is where you can go in and set up a target. And what's a target? Most important one you're probably going to use, event file. Yes, you can go to ring buffers and do all kinds of fun stuff with that. And yeah, there are other places that you can go to. I don't recommend most of these unless you're getting into really advanced stuff. Keep it simple, output to a file. When you output to a file, you get to give it a file name. You get to set a set max size. You get to enable rollover, and you get to set a limited file. How many files you want. You can make it big, make it small, and it will manage the files for you. Make sure you've got enough storage space for whatever you set up. I do recommend that you set up that max file size somewhat small. Gigabyte might be a little bit big, a little bit, not much. Maybe depending on your system, say 135 gigabit max, and then roll over. And the reason I say that is because you're going to want to be able to read this information, and while it's writing it, it makes it hard to get at it. So we're going to want to get at those things on the fly. Now, if we take a look at here, I've got one already running. We can click on live data. Oh, and I skipped the advanced tab because you guys don't need to see that. And so what I've got now are all the queries running against my AdventureWorks database. So any query that comes in, and you'll notice there's lots of activity because remember we started that PowerShell earlier, and so we're seeing all kinds of queries come by. The basic event is going by right here. And so we're seeing it, SQL batch complete in this case. And it shows us the batch text, CPU time, duration, Hunt, can you go shoot the dog? Physical reads. Sorry, the dog is being taken care of. 1 second. Row count, writes, all that fun stuff. We get to see it. Now, here's the fun bit. This is a very configurable interface. We can hide the value from the column, or we can add the value to the column. And so now it's up here, and we get to see the query as it goes by, whether or not it's batch text. Most of the ones that are coming by are not batch text. They're RPC complete, so we have to come down here and take a look at adding the statement. And now you can see, I know it's zoomed out a little bit, and now you can see the statements going by. Now, the beautiful thing is this is live data. This is SQL TV. Now, what's the impact on this on SQL from your server? Because remember, I mentioned earlier, whatever you do, don't run this. Don't run Profiler against your production server because it uses a different buffer. Does this use a different buffer? No. This uses the exact same buffer that's used to capture your events. If your events are not overflowing any kind of memory on your system, capturing and watching this stuff through here does not add a perceptible load to your system. I've measured it. I can't find a negative impact of watching this stuff. Now, if you watch it and manipulate it directly on your server, I'm talking about if you're reading it from a remote server, I have found zero impact. If you're reading it directly on your server, yeah, it's probably going to do something. I couldn't tell you exactly what. But as long as you're connected remotely and reading from it, it's going to be fine. It just works. There's really no issues with it. And as I said, these things are already massively less impact than trace events, a lot less. Can you see what's inside cursors? Yeah, absolutely. You would have to capture statement level events as opposed to RPC complete, but you can capture that information. Again, caution, right? This is low cost. Low cost and no cost are not the same. Can you see the parameter values passed? You sure can. Zoom in so you can see it. Oh. There it goes. God, like, there's a value in there someplace. There it is. Passed in two values, impid int and impid. And it's 286. Can you aggregate this by procedure name? Sure, you could aggregate it by procedure name, but why would you want to? You can aggregate it by object ID. You could aggregate it by procedure name. I mean, you see the object name is already there. But you could aggregate it by the query hash. You could aggregate it by the query plan hash. You can aggregate it by all kinds of fun stuff. You can get nuts with this. It's great. I love it. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. So, and it's really easy because you just, I'm going to stop the feed for a second. You go up to here, and they've got grouping. And so, oh, it's grouping on, hang on 1 second. My bad, my bad, my bad. Let's add object name. We're just adding object name up here to the columns, and now we can group by object name. And so that's going to group all of my store procedure calls regardless of the parameters passed. And if you don't think that's a giant win and make things so much easier, you're crazy. It's grouping the information right now, 10%, 12%. You can see it occurring right here. Again, my server's, I'm running on my little laptop here, and it's running a little slow today. I'll have to try turning it off and turning it back on again. Because we all know that works on production servers, right? Which method do I generally prefer? I prefer extended events and augmented with dynamic management objects. There's nothing really wrong with the dynamic management objects. I use them regularly for that instant snap, what's going on, what's inside the system. But for monitoring and detailed monitoring and long-term gathering of data to determine what's been running long, how many times is something called, that sort of stuff, it's extended events all the way. There's just, trace is just problematic these days. So you can see the calls that have been made. Now, most of them have been made through SP_execute SQL, right? I'm doing our, the code you're seeing is not good code. I've got stuff that's just placing a load on the system. So this grouping is probably not indicative of your normal thing, but you can see what's going on here. Now, if I wanted to, I can actually filter in here by by statement to get additional stuff. I can do searches, all kinds of fun stuff, and we can keep going, but we're going to back out because I've got a couple more slides to get through, and then we'll open up for questions because we said we can go over a couple of minutes. So the goals, hopefully you guys got 3 different methods for gathering information, right? DMOs, which you absolutely should use, trace, which you should stop using, and extended events, which you should start using. The resources for this stuff, scarydba.com/resources has all the scripts. It does not have this slide deck yet, but I will get that slide deck up there. And then the book, SQL Server Query Performance Tuning, that I wrote has got all of this and more inside of it, tons and tons and tons of information. Now, as I said, I want to put up my slide contact information again. Now, let's go through and just make sure that we're answering questions. I'll leave this up for a minute while we answer questions. Can you aggregate data by procedure name? Yes. Which method do you prefer? Again, store extended events and the DMOs. Can you store captured events into a table query event file? Yes, sir, you can. Let's do this because I'm running a little short on time. You can start and stop events through the command line. You can see what events you have by selecting from them. You can drop an event if you want to. You can read directly from a file through an extended function, extended event or extended function, fnxe file, target read file, and pull that file directly into a table. And then once you've got it, here's a query where I'm doing with X events, I'm pulling out the XML data and putting it into a table directly. So then I can query it after the fact. It's off you go, all good. Let's see, another question. Do extended events cost if the transaction doesn't meet the criteria that you set up in the event? No. As a matter of fact, they don't. And now there's a whole, the filtering is a very extended topic, and we could spend a lot of time talking about that. What you want to try to find is the most restrictive filter first. So let's say I'm looking for AdventureWorks data, and I'm looking for something that is runs over a certain duration. What I would want to do is say, okay, only capture the events for AdventureWorks, right? So that's the most restrictive thing I can have, and then say only for stuff that's over this value, and that will eliminate most of the queries that are going against other databases, and then eliminate the queries that are less than the value. But that's how you can do it, and it's just you want it the most restrictive first in order to do process. What it does is it drops out. It just stops capturing the event as soon as one of the filter values is false. So that's you really want to hit that fast. Are new events added? Oh my God, yeah. Hundreds of events are added to extended events in 2014 and 2016. I should use a different picture. Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's my face. Let's see, what else we got? Is there a default location for XCL files? No, it's wherever you want to put them. However, there is one other extended event I would like to point out real quick. We don't have time to explore it, but I'm just going to open up the properties for it real quick. It's the always-on extended event. By the way, session. By the way, that session is running on all your servers right now. If you have 2008 or better, you have a system health extended event running. That event, that session is capturing a very particular event that all of you care about. Where is it? It's capturing, well, I don't see it, but it is doing it. I'll have to query it another time. It's capturing deadlock information automatically. You don't have to do anything to get deadlocks captured on your server. They're built right in. So you don't have to turn on trace flags. You can capture event deadlocks through your always-on. Oh, that's always-on health. Oh, no wonder it was system health. Good gosh. I'm a bad presenter today. System health. That's why I couldn't see deadlocks, and I'm skipping past something that I should be showing you. Let's go zoom back in. XML deadlock report. There it goes. Sorry about that, guys. Didn't mean to rip you off. System health, not the always on. Always on is if you turn on always on, but that's only going to be available in 2012 or up. System health is available on all your servers, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2014, 2016, and it captures deadlock information. You don't need to go in and set trace flags anymore. It's already there. And that goes out to a file, by the way, and that file does a rollover, and you can even look at where it's located, right? It's systemhealth.xel. It keeps 4 files, and it only grows to 5 megabytes. If you go past 5 megabytes, you're not going to be able to see it, but you get the idea. All right, let's switch back to the slides. How are we doing on time? Technically, we're out, but I'll go ahead and make sure we answer all the questions. Yes, Shayma, the 2008 R2, you have extended events available. You'll have to call them all through T-SQL. You do not have a GUI. You can consume the output from the 2008 R2 within the GUI in 2012, but you'll have to generate all the code and everything for those extended events directly through T-SQL. Does extended event session select all events and filters, or is it filters straight away? It filters immediately. The reason I am such an advocate for it is because it filters first. It doesn't capture the events and then filter. That's what trace does. Extended events is better. It's a preferred mechanism. It's safe to run extended events in production server, but not trace. Shouldn't we trace the production? No. It's safe to run extended events. It's not safe to run. It's not as safe to run trace. No, you should not run trace. You should run extended events. No, we didn't shoot the dog. We had him moved outside. And somebody corrected me on what I was on. That's cool. User-defined stored procedure names start with SP will affect query performance. Is that a truth or not? It is a very, 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 very minor performance impact, but there is one. Yes, Emily. Recorded. Yes, on the improved deadlock. No kidding. That's so much better than putting on trace. I don't see extended events on 2008. There is no GUI. Oh, here it says I got it. Okay, cool. Do you have extended events that you use frequently? There's nothing to download there, Vladimir. The ones I use the most are RPC Complete and SQL Batch Complete, because those are the ones that you look at for query tuning, right? So those are the ones I capture. I do capture statement completed, either RPC statement or batch statement, but it's, you know, that stuff's depends. Other than that, yes, I capture deadlocks, I capture wait statistics, I capture recompiles. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The number of events available through extended events is huge. Today, I focused down on query time, but there, you know, there is just a giant list of events that you're going to want to capture. Okay, so that's all I've got. If there are no more questions, we're going to wrap things up. I'll wait just a second. Tracking server status is completely different. Oh, actually, let me scroll back through just to see if I missed any questions. Sound. Parameter values, yeah, Mark Freeman, we answered that question. Parameter values are captured through either trace or extended events, but not through the DMVs. What RAID use on SSD? Totally different non sequitur. Can't answer that one right now. If you use 3-proc cache, is it a problem? Yes, it is. Probably shouldn't be doing that. How about third-party apps? Third-party apps are awesome. There's a whole slew of them. It's basically, if you're looking at a third-party app, what you're doing is you're buying time, because you can do all the monitoring yourself. You do not need to purchase a third-party app. There's nothing magic about what third-party apps are doing. They're capturing wait statistics. Cool, you can do that. They're capturing query performance. Cool, you can do that. They're capturing different, you know, CPU, memory, all that fun stuff. You can do all that stuff yourself. However, it takes time to set up, and so you're going to a third-party product to buy time, right? You go and get their stuff. They've already built pretty reports on all these things, and you're going to go and use those. I prefer to have the knowledge of what they're doing and then buy the tool. Are those actual execution plans? In this case, the ones we were looking at were plans out of cache, which means that they're not technically actual plans. The difference between actual and estimated is a different discussion for another day, because it's not as subtle, it's not as clear as you think it might be. We did answer Jared's question. Is it useful to save the data inside DMVs into permanent tables? I have done that in the past, yes, Alejandro, who has left. Oh, well, still it's a pertinent question. I have done that. It's not something I do commonly, but if you are concerned about capturing something from the DMVs, behavior that the DMVs capture in a particular way, yeah, you might want to do that. Generally, I would not. Instead, I would go with using extended events. Performance issues in Azure, pretty much the same as they are in everything else. If all the memory gets loaded in memory, well, there will still be performance issues. You're still going to... Bad statistics cause problems. Bad indexes cause problems, right? I mean, nothing changes. Let's scroll down to the bottom. SP procedure params 100 managed. I don't even know what the heck that is. Sorry, Mark. That's something I have to look up. I don't have a good idea. Can you capture actual execution plans with extended events? Yes. But be cautious, because that's impactful, right? So be careful. Third-party apps, and okay, cool. All right, that's it. I guess we're going to be done, right?
Thanks, Grant.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Hopefully you can come back again for us sometime.
I'd love to. Love to.
Good deal.
I mean, based on some of the questions coming back, execution plans.
Hey, our guys are into this stuff. They really love it. Okay. We, as I've stated earlier, the session is recorded and it'll be available in a couple of days, maybe as soon as this afternoon, on our YouTube account site, and you can get to that from our archive section. The scripts and slides,
I can give them to you as well,
okay,
if you guys have a place to put them.
We'll do it both ways, and that way people might want to come to your website and look at a lot of the other things you have, and we'll also put them on ours.
Right. So they'll be at scarydba.com/resources or slideshare.net.
Good deal. And for this afternoon, for this presentation, we're going to have 6 people that we'll put into the drawing for $200. Tara Walker is in on that. And then in September, we'll be giving that away. And hopefully, maybe we'll be able to give a free session away to Pass Summit in September. That would be fantastic. Yeah, it's great. In July, we'll be having Mickey Stewie presenting SSRS 101. And in August, a topic that a lot of people had questions about, Jez Borland will be moving from Profiler to extended events. So this will be a follow-on to Grant's just whetted your appetite for it. And as far as DMVs, we have a great session by Glenn Berry that went over his DMV scripts.
Yeah, I forgot about Glenn Berry's scripts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so you can find great stuff out there. One of the things I loved about this presentation, though, is it's easy to find scripts out there that will show you all of this information. But you're, like you said, you were going into it and showing us how we could do it ourselves, so we understand the scripts a lot better.
Right.
Okay. If there's anything else, I guess that's it. I really appreciate it. We had... I'll let you know, but we probably had close to 400, so.
Whew, cool.
Good deal.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, and thanks everybody who's still hanging out here listening to us babble. Appreciate your time. Really do.
There were at least 200 people. Now it's starting to drop.
Right. Yeah, they're all realizing they're not giving out any more good information.
It's just congratulations, and we'll see you next month. I'll send you a list of these I'll go over them. I think you answered pretty well everything, but I'll send you a list of this stuff if you want me to.
Okay, yeah. There was the one question there that I really didn't know what the heck he was talking about.
I didn't know that either. We'll have to Google it and go to our DBA and Google Okay.
Cool. Hey, bye, Simon. I'm going to be in the UK for about 5 hours on Friday, so.
Okay. Like I said, I really appreciate it. I'll email you with all this stuff, and you can get me the slides and scripts, and I'll put those up. Then in our email, I'll tell them where they can get them again at your site. So that'll drive some
awesome
people to your
Great.
site.
Well, all right. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.